so I generally kept my distance. There was an unwritten rule that he was never to be crossed, not because we feared the spoiled young man himself, but because we feared his family. His full name was Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus. He had been born on the battlefield in Gaul, the son of the great general Germanicus and his wife Agrippina. It was the soldiers who had dubbed him Caligula, which meant little sandals. He became a good luck charm of sorts for Germanicus's troops, and they would let him march into battle with them, staying near the rear of the lines. He was the great-nephew of the emperor, and might one day be emperor himself, if his mother managed to poison all the right relatives. He was also a bully. He had been taunting my friend Marcus earlier in the walk, taking his frustrations out on the smallest among us. Now he was just plain tired. "This is outrageous," Caligula said more than once. Unlike Lucian, he said it loud enough for Seneca to hear. Yet our teacher ignored him and kept on walking. A few times Caligula stopped, and the legionnaire pushed him, though not as hard as he shoved the rest of us. I kept my head down and focused on each step, counting to 100 and then starting over again. I was in my usual spot at the front of the class, not far behind Seneca. It was nearly noon when Seneca finally stopped by an open pasture on the side of the road, near a small, cool stream. I dropped my beam on the ground and bent over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. Seneca allowed us to get a drink and told us to sit on our crossbeams. He stood in the middle of our little band. The sun nearly blinded me as I looked up at him. Seneca wiped the sweat from his eyes and began the day's lessons. The legionnaire stood next to him, arms folded across his chest, scowling. "You have all heard of the Third Servile War," Seneca said, "when Spartacus led a 2-year slave rebellion against Rome. The Senate didn't take the slave rebellion seriously until it became clear that Rome itself was under threat. Some of my friends fidgeted on their beams, trying to get comfortable after the long walk. Not me. I could listen to Seneca all day. His curly hair, round baby face, and small blue eyes made him seem as harmless as a child. But he had a commanding voice, and I loved his wit and cynicism in the same way I imagined Cicero's students had once loved him. Armies destroyed people, and gladiators entertained them, but orators like Cicero and Seneca inspired them. One day I would do the same. Marcus Licinius Crassus was the richest man in the Senate, perhaps the richest man in Roman history, Seneca continued. He had more than 500 slaves and was an expert in architecture. He knew how to control flames by destroying the burning buildings and curtailing the spread of flames to nearby homes. When fire struck Rome, Crassus and his men ran to the flames and offered an option to the surrounding property owners. They could sell to young Crassus on the spot at a discounted rate, or they could watch their houses go up in flames. As soon as they shook hands on the deal, Crassus's slaves would extinguish the fire, and Crassus would reap his rewards. "Brilliant," Caligula said. Seneca shot him a look, but I knew Caligula didn't care. At the height of his wealth, Crassus was worth more than 200 million sestertii, and because he had built his fortune on the backs of slaves, he had a great incentive to quash Spartacus's rebellion. Since Rome's best generals were fighting in foreign lands, Crassus raised his own army to march against Spartacus and the rebel slaves. The first several battles did not go well for Crassus. At the first sign of trouble, his men abandoned their weapons and fled. To improve morale, Crassus revived the ancient practice of decimation. Lucian, what does that mean?
I am sorry, Master Seneca. What does what mean?
Seneca let a few beats of silence show his displeasure. Decimation. What is the origin of that word? Lucian frowned. I do not know.
Anyone?
Seneca asked. I knew the answer.